What would it look like for queer and trans folks if we didn't have to put that armor up every time we left the house? How would we be able to show up? What type of talents, what type of skills, what gems are we suppressing as individuals because we have to put that armor up?
Hey.
Hi, Kristen. Pizarro III. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the executive director of TransTech Social, brand designer, web designer, behind the scenes content pro, kind of all things creative tech. I'm a Black, Latino, queer, trans man. Really what I do is open the door for different opportunities for marginalized communities to enter into a career in tech, whether it is a traditional career or entrepreneurship, but really closing those gaps to get into tech. It's a lot of accessibility and educational barriers, so make sure that those barriers are a little bit less. I was born in New York, raised by New Yorkers in New Jersey, small town, kind of small-ish, called Somerset, New Jersey, right down the street from Rutgers University. I grew up in a time where there wasn't like a gay student alliance and things like that. It was just a bunch of queer kids that played sports and snuck to the club on the weekends. We went to New York. There was a smaller club in Newark, New Jersey called The Globe that a lot of us went to. It was kind of a place where every kind of queer, Black queer kid or just queer kid in general went on Friday nights, so like we didn't get in trouble before we had to play sports and things like that. My community was like my basketball teammates, my soccer teammates. I play AAU basketball as well, so like we play basketball all year round. So that's a lot of what my community looked like. I was also a Girl Scout, so my friends were Girl Scouts. It never was super like LGBT, just because, you know, the time and my age during that time, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now. It was kind of like, wait, you what? So yeah, just people that I hung out with. I'm not really cool with all of them now, you know, growing pains. But yeah, that's what community looked like for me. Even though I was raised in New Jersey, but by New Yorkers, we went to New York every Sunday for family dinner with my grandparents, either Bronx or in Harlem. So, you know, it played a lot into like who I am, and even down to when I do quote go home, I go to New York. I don't necessarily go to New Jersey often. I would say like a few of my teachers, one of my coaches, Miss Mitch, she was really dope. I can remember the first time I went to the barbershop to get an edge up, and the barber cut me, and instead of like kind of chastising me for getting the haircut, she took me to the nurse's office. She told me how to take care of it. She told me what to tell the barber in the future so I didn't get cut. So that was like really affirming in a way, because I thought that like I had got a haircut and the edge up was the way the guys get the edge up, and I didn't want anybody to say anything because it was super intentional. And also my uncle, he was like a really cool man. Really fly in the 90s, had a nice job, had an earring, and you know, that kind of, you know, he was smart and he had the girl and he had the apartment. So it was looking up to him like, oh, so you can be fly and still like have like a good job and hang out and all those things. Like I saw so many people with like corporate jobs being like really in a box, and he wasn't that. I came out to my family when I was 15, the first time. Came out and I just told them I like girls. Like I didn't really go into gender. I didn't really understand that. But I always knew the term lesbian didn't fit with me. That was something that I always confused my parents about. I would come home and they were like, but you're a lesbian. And I'm like, a lesbian is a woman who identifies as a woman, and I don't identify as a woman, and I would just walk away. And they would just sit there and like, what the hell did they just say? So, you know, at 15, it was trying, you know, ran away from home a few times, self-harm, attempted suicide a few times. My family, they came around eventually. And then, you know, I threw another curveball at them when I was almost done with my degree. And it was strategic. I come from a lot of privilege. Both of my parents have college degrees. I was brought up in a two-parent household. And I was terrified that my parents would stop paying for my education if I came out as trans. I had moved away once I graduated high school. And I had already stopped going by my birth name. Everybody knew me as something else. So I was literally living two lives. one life in Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads area, and one life in New Jersey. And then I was clear for graduation, where they give you like the financial clear, the grade clear, like all clear. And I was like, okay, it's time to say something, because they sent me this application for graduation and I'm looking at the name and I'm like, I don't even identify with that anymore. So February 2012, I called my mom. I had like a really bad breakdown, actually on Valentine's Day, which is really weird. But it was like I had always known. So like partners that I had dated, they always knew like this being with me, this is a possibility. I am not, because I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose financial support when it comes to me finishing my degree. My whole mindset was, if I can get this bachelor's, I can do whatever I want to do. And even if my parents do cut me off, I have a path to sustain my life. So I came out to my parents in February. My parents said they knew. They had said they already knew. They were like, okay, what do you want to change your name to? Like all these things. They financed a lot of my early transition, from surgeries, hormones, name change. And I kind of like put my foot down, like, I'm graduating, I need this done for graduation, and I'm applying for jobs, and I was applying for corporate jobs. And I was like, I want to enter into corporate America as myself. I don't want to have anything in my head to stop me from performing as my highest self at work. Like, I just want to go to work, get my check, and go home. So yeah, so then, what is it? Almost 11 years later, here I am, very out. I was stealth for 10 years though. When I entered into corporate America, I noticed very quickly that it wasn't safe for me to be out. Even though the company had 100% with corporate equality index with HRC, all of those things. And this was during the time where marriage equality passed in DC. So like marriage equality passed and they were like, yes, this is great. We're gonna have drag bingo. And I was like, well, we have this big building. Can we ask the building people if like at least there's one gender neutral bathroom? And it's like, that's too political. I was like, y'all just fought for marriage. I'm talking about using the bathroom. And we got this 24-floor tower with the company's logo at the top, and we don't have not one gender neutral bathroom. So I knew very quickly that it wasn't safe for me to be out. So I went stealth, low disclosure. And then I started to get more into community once I joined my fraternity, which is exclusive for men of trans experience and non-binary trans masculine folks. And I needed community service hours. And I didn't want to out myself because of the demographic that my fraternity was for. So TransTech Social had a opening event in Miami where they were talking about what they were doing. And the founder, Angelica Ross, was there. And it was during a day where we could go and volunteer and do community service hours and still get paid to be at work. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna go, it's community service, and I still get to be paid to be at work. So it was a win-win situation for me. I went, I saw Angelica speak, and I want to say like that was the first time I had saw a Black trans person in tech, like actively talking about tech. She was like, I need help, I need volunteers. And once she said volunteers, I was like, my community service hours. So after the event, I went and I spoke with her and I was like, hey, I'm a man of trans experience, but I'm stealth in corporate America. These are the skills I have. I'm so down to help you with whatever, as long as you sign off on my community service hours. And she was like, sure, fine. Once that happened, she had flew me out to Chicago for the first TransTech Summit at Groupon headquarters. I helped her with logistics of the summit, putting together computers and things like that. And I've been with the organization since. There was a slight drop off when like my world fell apart. I got laid off, my ex-fiance left, I had 2 deaths in the family. And that's the one thing I can say is like, I didn't feel bad for having to step away. I think a lot of times when we're doing community work and things like that, we feel bad when life happens. And Angelica was really gracious. She was like, get your life together. If I find some contracts that can help you get some extra money, like I will funnel those contracts to you because I know you're looking for work. It's been cool, and I've been back as the executive director since 2021, October 2021. Angelica did a favor for me, so I told her I would do a favor for her. And it was a big favor she did for me. The first inaugural Trans Visibility March on DC that happened in 2019 out here, I was the director of communications and social media for that march. And I secured her as the keynote speaker for that march, which people are still like rallying about. And her main thing was like, if I do this for you, like I'll do this for you, we'll figure it out, but I need to figure out TransTech. And this was at the height of Pose, American Horror Story, everything. She was like, I'm too busy, but I'm bringing a bunch of people back that have been with TransTech, and can you help me figure it out? So I came back and we're definitely figuring it out. Didn't know I would end up being more visible and highly visible and the executive director, but honestly, like you never know where your journey or path it takes you, but I really am passionate about it because I see liberation for all marginalized communities through tech. I'm in my own head thinking I'm always the only trans person in the room. So I don't know if I've interacted with other trans people in tech, in the workplace, etc. That was the first time that I knew that I was seeing another trans person, that self-taught coder, graphic designer, all of those things. And I'm like, wow, okay, cool. Like there's a community there of people. And what really hit home is like the empowerment piece, because you need that possibility model a lot of times. You hear, especially like celebrities and stuff, say like, I didn't know I could be that until I saw somebody that looked like me or sounded like me that did it. And granted, like Angelica Ross is a trans woman and, there's visibility there. And I see that now that like I can be that possibility model for men of trans experience to see themselves in tech as well. So TransTech Social, we employ, empower, and educate while centering Black trans women in our work. So it's not just for trans people. We have 98% of our membership is trans, but there are cis people there. Out of our membership, we have grown to over 5,400 members across 50 countries. When I stepped in, we had 800 members, so like we have been growing rapidly. But what we do at TransTech is we provide educational resources for free to our members, as well as certifications, networking, job opportunities. And these job opportunities, we talk to the companies beforehand. So there's a level of checking that we're doing outside of, hey, if they're large enough, if they have the corporate equality index, great. But we want to talk to the trans people that work there. What are their experiences? Also, we have those companies come in and do networking events. So the employees that are there that are trans and gender nonconforming and non-binary can talk to our membership and say, hey, this is what it's like to work here. I really enjoy it. And our members have an opportunity to ask those questions that they may not feel comfortable asking in the interview process, right? Because they're trying to say like, yes, I belong here. They can ask those questions like, how's the pay? How are the benefits? Did you have to fight for any of your trans health care, et cetera, et cetera. We have our TransTech Summit. So our TransTech Summit happens every year. This year is March 28th to March 31st. And at our TransTech Summit, it is free for our members. And our membership is free, so if you become a member, you can go to the summit for free. We pay our speakers, so we stipend all of our speakers. Our speakers, we really strive to have majority trans and gender nonconforming speakers come in and speak about what they're experts on in tech, whether it's through diversity, representation, and inclusion, social justice and human rights, media, advertising and marketing, web design and coding, business and career, health, wellness, and technology, really making sure that we're spreading the message that one, tech isn't everything. Tech can't afford to leave anybody out, and tech definitely can't afford to leave trans people out, because trans people really need that access and community. And I think the other thing that TransTech Social provides is that community. A lot of people come just to network, just to meet other trans people in tech, where you don't necessarily feel pressured to talk about your transitional journey. You can talk about your career, you can talk about your hobbies, you can talk about your likes and your dislikes. A lot of trans people don't have that opportunity because they're in survival mode and thinking about how they're gonna either get their hormones or get their medication or get their next meal and all of those things. And we provide a space where we can support with that. We can, if that's what you need, we can connect you with the resources that that other organizations are doing. But you can come in here and you can learn. No question is a stupid question, right? You can come in and you can ask questions, and there are people not only coming to learn, but there are people coming in literally just to teach. Like, hey, I made it this far in my career. I want to give back. I want to help. I want to mentor. Can I do this? Can I do that? So it's really a community where everybody wants to thrive and everybody wants to win. And that's really, really what I love about the community. We just brought on 22 community advisory board members, which is our volunteer board that helps support the operations of the organization. And they are so eager to just help and assist and learn and teach each other amongst themselves. And then there are people that are new to tech coming in and they don't know exactly where their placement is. And that being new to tech, we have our GROW program, Gaining Real Opportunities at Will, which is our career readiness program that's supported by google.org, where we go over transferable life skills. We go over salary negotiation, resume review, interview prep. And then at the end, we have scholarships for certifications with Google at the end. So they can get a scholarship for cybersecurity, IT support, data analytics, project management, UX design, and it's upon completion of the GROW program, because obviously the scholarships cost. And the scholarships, we just secured a partnership with Career Circle, where they give us, they have donated money for us to pay for those scholarships. So now we have even more scholarships for the next year to not only give to GROW participants, but also to career professionals that are looking to change their career. If I know you can keep a job, I already know that you're committed to the change of the career. Holistically, we're like really starting from the ground up. I feel as though when you center the most marginalized and make it most accessible and equitable for the most marginalized, it ends up being accessible and equitable for all. It's dangerous being in sex work, and that is the journey of our founder. Our founder taught herself coding to go from posing on the site to managing the site, to then not being on the site or at all, right? And now Hollywood, Broadway, etc. It's the model of trans tech. It is the blueprint. It is the possibility model that founder Angelica Ross put in place. And for us to go from survival to thriving, it does a disservice to not show exactly what happens when you ostracize trans people. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yes, there are some trans people that are in sex work because they like sex work, right? Sex work is work. That's what they like to do. But there are some that are there are a lot that are in sex work, not because they like it. Yeah. Because they don't have any other way. They've been fired multiple times for the job because they said that their appearance wasn't good. And not that it wasn't, oh, I'm coming in a dress or a suit, but literally how they looked. Yeah. When they woke up in the morning and put on the clothes they told them to put on, they still were uncomfortable with it. That's why we hit home on like, yeah, you can go work a job, but you can also be an entrepreneur, right? So then you can still have that entrepreneur where you have that freedom of how you work, when you work, who you work with, but you can be a little bit safer and you can make a lot more money and you don't have to put your body on the line. You don't have to put your health at risk. All of those different things to really hit home on safety, because that's I think that's one of the main things that community is looking for. Not just jobs, but we're really looking for safety. When I first started college, I started as an engineering major. Always been into tech. Both of my parents have computer science degrees, so computers have always been big for me. Engineering is really boring. I'm not even gonna lie. It's super boring, for me at least. To all the engineers out there, I'm sorry. But for me, it was super, I was like falling asleep in class. My grades weren't bad, but my advisor was like, hey, this is what you would be doing. If you're falling asleep in class, you're likely gonna fall asleep on the job. Before I took a break from school, I had changed my major to graphic design. And the school that I was going to had started a football team. And then they were cutting the arts program. I ended up getting my Bachelor's of Fine Arts in graphic design from the Art Institute of Virginia Beach. I actually started in like a print shop. So I started in like FedEx office, working in their large signs and graphics. Did not know you could go to school for that. So I was building signs, yard signs, banners, pamphlets, posters. And one of the guys that worked there, he was going to Norfolk State University. And he was like, you can go to school for this. Like, you're really good. Like, you could go to school for this. And I was like, wait. You can go to school for this? Because my family wasn't, arts. It was science, technology, like very corporate. And I was like, I'll look into it. And then a commercial came across my screen one day that there was an art institute opening up down the street from my house. And I applied, and they told me that with the credits I already had, I could finish in a year and a half. And I was like, sure. What do you need me to do? So, but I'm very much into all things technology. So like my friends call me the neighborhood tech support. Something's going on. They're like, oh, my Wi-Fi's not working. Instead of calling like their cable company, they'll call me. I work for myself. I have my own design firm outside of the work that I do with TransTech Social. So there's opportunity there not only to, let me get a good job and get that stability, but also there's a level of freedom there where you now have these skills and now you can offer these skills independently. A lot of tech work, you can work remote. So tech has a lot of contract jobs, has a lot of remote jobs where you don't necessarily have to go into the office. I know a lot of trans folks have social anxiety, especially if they're early in their transition and they're not yet confident and comfortable in how they show up in the workplace around other people. So there's that, but it also gives you self-autonomy. You don't necessarily have to work for anyone. You can work for yourself. From anybody else, that would really give you a whole bunch of freedom on who you work with, how you work. Of course, that comes with a different level of discipline that I had to learn. But the one thing I really want to hit home is like you then put a lot of your movement in your own hands because now you have tangible skills that not only translate to the workplace, but translate to life. Because technology isn't going anywhere. You gotta pay your bill through an app. You have to pay your rent through an app. Being well-versed in technology only helps your life be more streamlined and more accessible. I wanna be a businessman. I am a businessman, but I want to finish a product that I've been working on for a few years called Marsha's Web, which is a resource directory that centers BIPOC, trans, and GNC folks. So what I found out was I started transitioning in medically in 2012. And about 2020, I was mentoring like young guys and just, on Facebook, helping them figure out where they can get their hormones, name change. And I realized things were still the same. That you had to know somebody, to know somebody, to know somebody, to figure out what doctor to go to figure out, where to find community. So with Marsha's Web, what I've done is I've sourced all of the resources that I've had access to, that the communities that I've had access to, and the goal is to put it all in one place. Behind password protection, obviously for security, because having a place where all of that lives in one place is extremely, extremely dangerous. It's part of the reason why it's taken so long, because security has to be right. But this helps where these organizations and companies, they've already served trans folks and BIPOC folks. So community knows they're safe for them. A lot of trans folks, when they start transitioning or going into LGBTQ plus community, they go into these places and they're transphobic. They get misgendered in LGBT spaces, right? So centering trans folks, once again, and make sure that everybody's covered. So even if now you identify as cisgender, but you're transitioning along, you end up transitioning, you know that you have made a community where you can still stay in that community and you can still be a part. So that's one of my big thing is I want to get Marsha's Web off the ground. It's a resource directory, a website right now, but keep launching the website to eventually be able to build an application. The application part is accessibility. I always think about how can the person in between gigs or in between clients access things. For safety reasons, I did not come out at my first corporate job. I actually had a coworker who we went to college together, and the first college I went to, the dorms were separated by gender, and we shared a dorm. She didn't remember me, But I remembered her, and then we just started like randomly talking, and I'm not thinking of like, oh wait, I probably shouldn't tell the truth about where I've gone to school and things like that. And I did, and it kind of caused a lot of friction where there was all of a sudden whispers of like, who is this guy and what's his deal and why is he always sticking up for the LGBT community and he's straight, because I had a girlfriend and all these things, and I'm like, I'm not straight, but I'm not about to tell y'all that. But when I worked at another job, I was a contractor in South Florida, I did tell my coworkers I was trans. During that time, there was just a lot of stuff in the media, so it was just conversation over the water cooler. And it was like, Edward, why you're always going so hard for the LGBT community? And I was like, well, I feel like, everybody deserves, happiness, respect, bare minimum. And it was like, but you're not gay and you're not a part of the community. I said, now you're making a lot of assumptions. But okay. And they didn't really drop the conversation. So I told them, I was like, actually, I'm a part of the community. I am transgender. That's why. And everybody got quiet. And an older lady came up to me in front of everybody and she put her hand on my shoulder. She was like, you're such a handsome man. I don't know why you would ever want to be a woman. And I said, you know what? Never mind. I'm exactly what you see. And I went back to work. So because I am cis assumed and there's not a lot of visibility around men of trans experience, my experience of coming out, they think that I'm a cisgender man that is transitioning to be a trans woman. So, and I understand with the need to center trans women because of the violence and the harm and all of those things. But men of trans experience the same violence and harm too, just in a different way. There's active erasure where people don't even believe that trans men exist, where a lot of our experiences, especially those that are cis-assumed, I don't say passing because I'm not passing as anything. I'm not tricking anyone. You're assuming that I'm cisgender. It's crazy what cis straight people say when they don't think a trans person is in the room. I've heard some crazy things. Yeah. I am most proud of being an entrepreneur, being able to have the freedom to what projects I want to take on, what clients I want to take on, what my work looks like. That's what I'm most proud of, and I'm most proud of that TransTech invites that. When and Ms. Ross asked me to take over as the executive director of TransTech, I was like, look, I got businesses. I'm not about to not have my business to figure out TransTech. And she was like, the model of TransTech is, I want you to still have your business. That's the whole point of TransTech. Like, you were able to scale your business because of the network you met within TransTech. I do not want any of your businesses, any of your projects that you have going on right now. No, like, keep them going. So I think that is empowering in itself, because I feel like I get to what I'm good at and what I'm passionate about, I get to merge it together with TransTech. Like, I'm passionate about my community. I understand the privilege that I have, not just as a person with a degree, but going into these rooms, and when I'm talking to partners, they're like, it's so great that you're an ally for the community. And I'm like, I'm not an ally, so we're gonna keep going. But I also understand, because of the way the mind works and the brain works and society works, they're able to hear certain things from me that they're not able to hear from other queer and trans folks. They're able to take it a different way. They're able to consume that and not take it as offensive or that I'm personally attacking them. And that's where I really think a lot of the change can happen. I kind of want to be like that Trojan horse of like, I'm going in here, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, you're cool with me, but I'm talking about the visibly trans and queer folks. I'm talking about the person that comes into work that may wear a dress and have a beard and makeup and earrings, and they're saying to use they, them pronouns. That's the type of person that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Black trans woman that is a sex worker, that is coming off of sex work and into technology and making a safe space for them. You know, that's hit home like, it's not me. People like me are already in tech, and you just don't know it. We're already there. We're already in the spaces. I'm talking about those that need access to these spaces that don't already have access. You need to have trans folks and queer folks in leadership, trans folks and queer folks in management at every level. Because what I am seeing is that the higher ups of a lot of these companies, they are invested in diversity. They want it, and not just from a we have to do it standpoint, but genuinely like, if we're missing high talent, I want the best talent regardless of their experience, right? But that culture doesn't trickle down into the management that staff will be directly reporting to. So I think one of the main things is having trans and queer people at every level, not just the entry level, but at the management level, at the senior level, in the C-suite, because that shows, one, that you're committed at every level of having queer and trans folks there, and then you have the voice in the room when it comes to decision making and what is needed for the community, and really showing a path to growth within your company. Trans and queer people come in and they see all the trans and queer people at entry level, but none are managers, none are senior levels, none are in the decision making capacity. You're kind of like, oh, y'all only want us here. So really invest in trans and queer development and leadership. So having us at every single level. It's also about shifting the culture. Just having the people in place is one thing, but allies and accomplices in the workplace are huge. So really having a culture of inclusion, not just a policy of inclusion, but a culture of that. A culture of understanding we're not assuming anything about anybody in the space, not just the queer and trans folks, but about anyone. So it gives everyone the autonomy to self-identify. One of my partners, they told me that they're in a C-suite at a large organization, and they're non-binary. And once they got promoted into this position, all of a sudden, there were so many people in the firm coming out as trans and non-binary. And they was like, I just don't understand it. I said, you made them feel like it was safe to be out. I was like, you gotta understand that. Like, there's a level of, once you see someone in that higher up position, you're like, well, they're up there, so I got somebody in the room that can help, that can protect, that can advocate. You don't know what allies are really about, but when you realize you have kin there, you have that community there, it gives you permission to be as well. The pattern that I've seen is the lack of investment in the culture. Really leaning hard on, well, we have these policies. And it's like, the policies are great, but if people keep violating the policy, you really have to have a culture of, we accept everyone here. A culture of, say for instance, you're having a conversation with someone, and instead of them assuming, oh, your husband, they start like, do you have a partner? Just blanket. So it gives you the opportunity to want to disclose or not disclose whatever information it is. But I know for me, like, it gets super uncomfortable when I'm in spaces, and especially LGBT spaces. They don't assume that I'm trans. They assume that I'm a gay man first. They'll be like, oh, your boyfriend. I'm like, what boyfriend? Y'all are really making a lot of assumptions about me, but really giving people that opportunity to self-identify. A lot of people want to do better, and they just don't know where to start. Like, I've gotten a lot of companies reach out like, hey, we know we're not making the mark. We're coming to you to figure out where we're missing the mark, and once we're making the mark, we'll come back to actually work together. But right now, we know we can't have your community here because we're missing the mark. So I think the one common thing is that a lot of people are self-identifying that they're missing the mark, and realizing as they're looking at their staff and looking at their company meetings that, oh, we're missing a lot of different people in this room. Our product and our customer experience isn't the best it could be because we don't have the same people in the room that are experiencing our product. I think there's an awakening of sorts of hey, we need to do better. We just don't know how. So TransTech assists them with knowing the how part of hey, culture, hire people, do this. It's more than just pronouns in your signature, right? It's normalizing. When you start a meeting and you introduce yourself with your pronouns. You don't just other the one person that is visibly queer or trans or told you that they had different pronouns than what they present as. You, across the board, everybody has to do it, so that person doesn't feel tokened out and singled out. Going deeper than pronouns for folks seems a bit challenging. They're like, well, we got the pronouns. And I'm like, it's more than that. Is your system set up where if a person doesn't have their name changed, that only HR knows it? Not their manager, not their boss, not anyone else. Their email can be the name that they've given you. Everything else can track with that name until you get to HR. Because obviously, tax purposes, you have to have the legal documentation on the name. Do you have that in place? Do you have it in place where in your benefits department that trans people can get certain things? Because that was one of my things. I had to fight with benefits for one of my surgeries. There was like, the benefits department was like, you can't get this surgery. You're a cisgender man. And I was like, no, I am not. And they were like, oh, wait a minute. What? Certificates are expensive. A lot of jobs require certifications, require prior work experience, doesn't really have a lane for folks that are self-taught of like YouTube University. A lot of my tech skills, I was self-taught. So I went to the Art Institute and got my bachelor's in graphic design, but I'm a self-taught video editor, video producer, sound editor, web designer, all of those, animator, all of those things because of the resources that I was able to find online as well as through TransTech. So there's a lot of barriers. The fact is that trans people, if they have to choose between spending $300 on a certification versus groceries and hormones for the month, they're gonna go for groceries and hormones for the month. I understand why people don't offer certifications for free, but also that's a huge, huge barrier. One of the certifications we have, from the Linux Foundation, we actually priced it out and they gave us a free coupon code for the courses as well as the exam. And the most expensive one is almost $1,200 for everything. And it's just who's spending $1,200 on a shirt? It's likely gonna take you 6 months to a year to finish it. It's gonna take some time to either return on your investment. And that time for trans people, that time is money. There's a lot of barriers, but at TransTech, we're actively trying to break those barriers down. And that's part of the reason why we offer our certifications for free through the Linux Foundation, as well as our partnership with Career Circle and our Google certifications. Trans people need to be on both sides of that technology. If they're not a part of building it, we know that tech is traditionally white, cisgender, male, and that doesn't really cover anybody else but them, right? And when you bring those different experiences to the table, that influences the technology. We need to be on both ends to make sure that technology isn't harming us. Because if we're not in the space building it, they don't know that something is going to harm the trans community because they don't have trans people there. The same way, similar to the technology with the faucets in the bathroom. They work for some people, but for me, I have to kind of wave a few times, and that's because the technology, they didn't check on darker skin, right? So that could all be avoided if people were on both sides of the technology. So that's why I really hit home of be on both sides. Yes, consume the tech, but ask questions. I really encourage trans folks to get into cybersecurity, UX design, because that's the experience and how you experience different platforms and websites, as well as project management. Because project management, if you've managed clients, if you've managed your life, you can manage a project, right? It's all about those transferable life skills. So the more diverse it is on the build side, the better the technology is. And for, the big companies, the more money you'll make. We live in a capitalist society, and I hit home to businesses often in large corporations hey, I get it, you don't want to do it, but you're missing out on money. That's really all they understand is the money aspect, right? You're missing out on money. If your product does not have every person that you expect to use it, building it, and in that experience of what they need, you're missing a gap. And trans people know this. Transitioning is a lot of money, and trans people spend a lot of money, even though we don't have the salaries to support the amount of money that we spend. The advice I would give to my younger self: be patient, trust yourself. I think a lot of times as a young person, I didn't believe what I knew to be true. I knew at a very young age that my body, the way I showed up in the world, didn't match how I felt. I didn't have the language for it, didn't know how to express it. But once I found it, I was like, this fits. Life is a journey, transition is a journey. There is no destination. A lot of times I've thought that things weren't the way I wanted them to go, was never the way it was supposed to go. Being able to walk away from things that didn't serve me, everything that I have experienced has made me a better man, a more intentional man, a more caring man. And I also tell my younger self, keep the women that are your friends close to you. They shape how you show up as a man. I think men of trans experience, we get a weird gaze, especially if we come from the lesbian community, of like, you're a traitor, you want to be, quote, the enemy. But I feel as though men of trans experience, especially those that were socialized as young girls, we can help dismantle that because we know the experience. We know what it's like on both ends. I saw what it was like when people started treating me different. I saw what it was like when all of a sudden now my voice is being heard. Trust the community that you have around you. You're gonna meet all different types of people along the way, and they're all gonna shape how you show up in the world. I think this generation, they have so much access. They know how to use technology and computers and iPads and all of those things. Like, really start to dive into what you're interested in. Is it math? Is it arts? Is it engineering? Is it science? Is it technology? And then under technology, is it creative tech? Is it traditional tech? Really look in and try different things. Try different things. And just because you're good at it doesn't mean that that's what you got to do. Try everything, because there is no wrong answer. Try it all. Don't let anything stand in the way of saying if you can or cannot.